And then until the last page where I was reading, I was like, okay, what if something happens right now? You're like, okay, now what? And now what? But I just felt like it was trying to do too much. I just don't get it. But okay. And then after that, I look at the book and I still have over 50 pages left, and I'm like, where am I going with the rest? Like, what is this all about? Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today I'm going to review The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Rekulak. This was one of my most anticipated releases for the year of 2024, and I wanted to thank Libro FM, the publisher, and the author for providing me with an ALC, and of course after that I had to pre-order my own copy. So in this review I'm going to do things differently. In the first part I'm going to talk about the book, what it's about, synopsis, and a bit more without spoiling it. And then in the second part I'm gonna tell you what I like, what I didn't like, the overall vibe of this book, which is different of what I thought it was gonna be, and my star rating. I think we can all agree that Hidden Pictures, which was a previous book written by Jason Rekulak, is a cult classic here on YouTube, or became one after being recommended over and over again in different thriller recommendation videos. So when I saw this book that it was going to take place in a remote location by the lake, a wedding was gonna happen there, and it used to be a camp, now it's all remodeled and luxurious, I just needed to have this book in my collection because these are the vibes that I want for my fall reads. It opens with a phone call. Maggie is calling her dad, Frank, and is inviting him to her wedding. Now Frank is really surprised that Maggie is inviting him because it's been a really long time since they talked to each other. We learned that something happened that fractured that relationship, but we don't know in the beginning what really happened. After that, he meets the groom and he starts asking questions, not only to Maggie, but with the fear that he is going to say something wrong and he's gonna fracture that relationship again now that she's back into his life. Eventually, before he leaves to the wedding, he receives something in the mail that makes question the groom even more, and he still shares this information with his daughter, and she tries to appease him, say that she already knows about this, but just to bring that information with him to the wedding, and she'll explain there. And in case I haven't mentioned, Maggie is marrying the son of a very rich man. So this man is well known by almost everyone, but especially Frank. So he is trying to understand a little bit more the dynamics of this family. Eventually something happens. They find something in the lake, and that's the second mystery, really, in my opinion, in this book. And then the twists and turns start from there, and they will never end. So again, very atmospheric, very mysterious. A lot of things are shared without giving us details, which keep us reading to try to find out what really is behind it. Now, as far as my personal review of this book, I'm gonna say that my overall feelings are this book was trying to do too much, too many twists at the end, and I felt like it was a mystery more than a thriller. In my personal experience and what I like in books and what really triggers my interest and keeps me reading page after page. Now this book had two main mysteries. The first one is what the dad received in the mail before going to the wedding, and then what happens at the rehearsal dinner, or I think it was right before the rehearsal dinner. And so it really kept me reading the book because I wanted to know about those things. But I didn't feel the thrills of, oh my gosh, that person's gonna die, oh my gosh, this is dangerous, or this person needs to be saved, or I did not get that edge of the seat kind of feeling. I felt like it was more of a mystery. Now this book went through a lot of social commentary, like trailer park culture and kids being ashamed of their parents because of their humble beginnings and then their successful lives in the end. Money, power. It touched on foster care, self-harm. I mean, check your triggers. There's a lot of things that are touched throughout this book that I feel like they were sprinkle here and there to make more a cohesive story, which it makes sense, but it's not the kind of stuff that keeps me intrigued. Another thing that really I didn't appreciate is that the big twist happened at some point, and then it was unexpected. I never thought that was really what was happening, but okay. And then after that, I look at the book and I still have over 50 pages left, and I'm like, where am I going with the rest? Like, what is this all about? I mean, are we going to go along with this marriage and just pretend that that didn't happen? Are we going to call it off? Is everyone going to go home? I mean, what was going to happen after the big reveal, I had no idea where this was going, but oh my gosh, I had to get ready because there was one twist after the next, and I just didn't appreciate the outrageous twists and turns that really led nowhere. I felt like it was just for shock value, but it wasn't really weaving to the story that was telling from the beginning. And maybe that's something that's just popular right now and people love it, and maybe it's my personal liking. That's why I want to kind of separate what the book is about from my personal experience with the book. But I just felt like it was trying to do too much. And I know there are some Riley Sager books. I haven't read them all. I do like his writing style for some of his books, but I just felt like it was one of those books, Riley Sager books, where you're like, okay, now what? And now what? And how are you going to explain this? And how are you going to explain that? And then there were problems starting at the end of the book that we didn't see coming, because they're just, it doesn't really go or weave into the story that he was telling from the beginning of this book. I don't think it's a bad book, and I don't think that I'm going to have a lot of people on my side of this review. I feel like a lot of people is just going to love it because you cannot really guess what really is happening, and if you can just have an idea of what the twist is going to be, you just have to wait 5 more minutes because there's another twist happening and another twist happening and another twist happening, and then until the last page where I was reading, I was like, okay, what if something happens right now? Because you're like, okay, now what? It's like one of those that you're just expecting something else to happen, because it seems like that's an interesting part of the story. The sister willing to go along with everything after she knew all the truth, after she found out about what was really happening, that was strange. And I thought it was going to lead somewhere, and whatever happened at the end is for you to find out. The little girl doesn't make sense to me in this book. And if you read this book and you can explain to me how this is adding to the plot and how everything that happened, everything this little girl said, and then what happened at the end, I just felt like it was like, I don't know, like an unnecessary character in this, unless we wanted to make it into some kind of social commentary or more of a redeeming ending kind of thing. The back incident, I don't get it. I don't understand why that happened. I just don't get what happened. Why was that part added or included to this book? It really added absolutely nothing but a few sentences to this book, and I don't see how it ties down to the rest of the story or how it's relevant to the rest of the story. And another thing that I thought it was really going somewhere, and then at the end I didn't understand, was the spiders. There's a scene with spiders, and then it's mentioned over and over again, and I felt like at the end it went nowhere. So I didn't understand why it was included in this book. Maybe as a shock factor, maybe, but I just did not understand it. And finally, the hairdresser involvement. Yes, I do know that at the end, that's how kind of things happen and resolve, but the hairdresser relationship, I felt like it was just thrown there so you would have some other person to kind of question, and I don't know. It's just, it didn't make sense. So my personal star rating is a 3-star. Unfortunately, I was expecting so much more from this book, and maybe it's completely my fault because of the, you know, hype around his previous book, but I just don't get it. You guys know that 5-star book for me, for my personal enjoyment, nothing to do with the library. My personal enjoyment is a book that keeps me entertained from the first page till the last. I had to really take my time to read this book. It took me weeks to finish it. I wasn't invested in the characters, and I felt like it was too character driven in the beginning. I just felt like nothing was happening, and whatever was happening was not interesting enough for me to continue to read the book. So it wasn't an enjoyable read. Was it satisfying at the end? Maybe. I mean, it got interesting, and you know, that's the part that I wanted to continue to read. Like, the last 2 hours of the audiobook were the hours that I was like invested, but this was what was it, like 12 hours? And you know, whatever it was, I spent the rest of the time not really invested in the story. In the last 2 hours, I just wanted answers. What happened with what he received at his house before going to the wedding? What really happened at the lake? You know, who was involved with this? I mean, those were the questions I had. But really, if it wasn't because it was one of the most anticipated books for 2024 in my personal rating, I just don't know if I would have read it, if I would have finished the book. It's just, that's the thing for me. Like, I say this all the time, maybe it's because I'm an older millennial that just needs to find the enjoyment from the beginning of the book, otherwise I'm not invested. It could be because of my ADHD, that if I'm not invested from the beginning, I'm likely not going to finish it. But honestly, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that is going to love this book, because I feel like younger generations are more invested in the twist at the end and not really what happens throughout the book. Maybe they can keep their attention throughout the book, you know, in the anticipation of what happened at the end. But for me, it's just not how my brain works. So unfortunately, this is a 3-star for me, and it has one of the most outrageous endings that I've read in a while. And let me tell you, I've read quite a few in the last couple of months. So I think that if the premise of this book really speaks to you, if it's something that you want to, you know, get all the fall feelings, I think this might be for you. I just have a different taste, and that's why it didn't keep me interested from the beginning, and that's why it didn't turn into a 5-star review. Now, if you read this book and you have the answers to my questions, please leave it in the comments down below. Are you planning to read this book? Is it something that piques your interest? Would you share with me what you think after you read it in the comments down below? Again, we don't have to agree on this. We can all agree to disagree on this book. It's just, I wanted to share my personal experience with it. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. I truly appreciate it. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.